This is Tech Insights with Brian Cochran, and today we're going to talk about the challenges of coming in as a new engineer working on the Behringer X32. That's coming up next. Hello, this is Brian, and I figured I'd take this moment. We won't be before you long, as they say, as preachers say. Anyway, that as we're a consultancy. We do repair and installations in churches and come in and redo systems and soundboards and digital as well as analog, and reconfigure them and repair them and so forth. And so we're working with a church currently that we had a challenge that they've had some issues with Behringer X32 the board itself. Let me start this way. If you're a beginner church, the Behringer X32 probably isn't the best for you. It's a clean board. It gives you the flexibility to have different users can have their own settings, and so that way if they come in, they can go click, this is my settings, and you can keep it as simple. But the routing for it is very difficult. So if you don't know what you're doing, and even myself, who's been working on digital boards for a while, and the Behringer not as much because of just about what I'm about to talk about. So, in working with this church, they've had different folks before ourselves come in, and they try to go on top of somebody else's settings to try to go forth, and that's almost like buying a house that is already furnished and trying to make it work. And a lot of times what you'll do, or like for folks that are in the real estate, investing, for instance, and they'll buy a refurbished house, and they want to go down to the bare bones to start over again, so that way they know where everything is and know how it is, especially if you don't have the plans to do it. So the good thing about the Behringer X32 board, it's a 32 channel digital board. The good thing about it is the price point is really nice because it keeps it under $3,000. So that's a good deal for an intermediate, beginner intermediate board. And the challenges of it is that it's very technical, and so it allows you great flexibility. So based upon how you set your workflow up, you can set it up for you, and then it'll be opposite for me. And one of the cool things about it is that you can everybody, as I said, everyone can have their own settings to a certain extent and their own workflow to make it work for them. But this church, the problem is that I told them once I saw it that we should go back to just zero out the board and start from scratch, because there's a matrix problem that they're having. And so what has happened a couple of times, we've gone there and we've gone to a certain extent and said, well, no, don't erase this because ABC 123 hasn't signed off on it. We're saying, well, look, that one is doing us no good to come here, because if we don't do a clean install, then the problem may persist. So that sometimes you have to go all the way back to zero out the board all the way from zero, and start off from scratch, so that way whatever the problems were won't continue, because of what we've been able to do is wipe everything away and start from a fresh and clean install. And so the Behringer board is great. Outside of that, it's once you got the routing right and everything right, it's a good board. But if you're a beginner church, it's going to be a challenge, because if you don't have a professional person or a person who really understands how the workflow goes and how the matrix work and how the different routing work, basically from the inception of someone setting up the board, it can be routed any kind of way you want. And that's been the challenge, because the routing was off at this board, and because of that, everybody else had tried to work on it, just come in and try to work on it, because the routing was done a certain way. And there's as they say, there's an industry standard that is done with most boards, and this one wasn't done that way. It's done a little bit different, and so it's been a challenge trying to get it done. But I just want to say this quick little insight today, that if you're a new engineer and you don't understand the routing, talk to the pastor, talk to whoever the people that are over within the ministry, and maybe come in and do a clean install and starting from scratch, so that way you don't inherit somebody else's problem. Or if you're coming on top of somebody else, then that means you gotta, one of the biggest things especially with that board more than any other board, is that you have to go in, and yes, there's great tutorials, but if you don't go in and work on the board and say, okay, I'm gonna put my laptop up or my cell phone up and watch the video, watch the tutorial. Then as it's going on, do it as you go. Then trying to do it at home and not doing it. So those are a couple of tips I want to just quickly talk about. One, don't be afraid to zero out the board and start from scratch, because sometimes that's for the best. And two, if you're trying to get into a digital board, Behringer may or may not be the one based upon who your engineers are and their experience. And so that's it for today. Let's talk insights with Brian Cochran. We'll talk to you soon. God bless.